Oke ya.
Prof Gisman.
Prof Gisman, Prof Syarif.
Welcome aboard, Prof.
Kita tidak main bulu tangkis ini karena mau ikut seminar.
Ya.
Mana Pak Prodi?
Ya. Minggu depan lagi kita main, Pak.
Salah. Hujan deras di sini udah, jadi agak aneh nih, agak jaringan ini. Saya matikan dulu.
Itu yang bunyi-bunyi apa itu dari hujan atau apa ya? Oke, sebentar lagi kita live stream and then we will start. Sorry about the delay. Prof Gisman, Prof Syarif.
Welcome aboard, Prof.
Kita tidak main bulu tangkis ini karena mau ikut seminar.
Ya.
Mana Pak Prodi?
Ya. Minggu depan lagi kita main, Pak.
Salah.
Oh, ini kalau saya live stream dia feedback ya, Pak Fauzan ya?
Iya, Pak.
Hujan deras di sini udah, jadi agak aneh nih, agak jaringan ini.
Bentar ya. Ini ada terus bunyi itu ya.
Paling ada welcome speech dari Pak Sekjur.
Mungkin it's not prepared for that.
Oke.
Pak Kajur yang saya minta, jadi mungkin di skip saja. Ya, mungkin sudah bisa dimulai Pak Fauzan. Ready when you're ready. Oh, ini ada Pak Muhammad Nathan ini. Pak Nathan.
Siap.
Apa kabar, Pak?
Om, baik, Pak.
Ya,
Om, linknya Nanda.
iya. Om Ling ini, Om Ling. Ya, lama tidak ketemu di YouTube ini, Zoom ini, Pak.
Iya, betul. Paling.
Been a while.
Apalagi? Ini di Makassar aja nih, paling.
Makassar.
Ya.
Bapak di Tunggu Minasa?
Enggak lagi di Bogor.
Oh, oke.
Iya.
Pak Fauzan, shall we get started?
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Our seminar is about to begin. Thank you very much for preparing yourself to join our seminar. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good morning, everyone. Respectable the head of English department, Dr. Santidar, who unfortunately cannot attend this seminar. The Secretary of Department, Dr. Lazundra, the Chair of English Education Program, Dr. Heril Korompot, as also the co-initiator of this event. Our distinguished speakers today, Ms. Carmila Mokognita and Ms. Ananda Muhammad, the honorable all lecturers of the English department and also from other universities, and the participants of this seminar. Welcome to the first session of the seminar and workshop series in 2022, organized by the English Language Education Program of Universitas Negeri Makassar. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Muhammad Miftah Fauzan, session's MC and moderator. Before the presentation begins, let me inform how the seminar will be going on. So first of all, the national anthem Indonesia Raya will be played. Second of all, welcome speech by Dr. Khairil Anwar Korompot, the chair of the English Language Education Program, followed by the seminar's housekeeping information. Afterwards, the speakers, Mrs. Carmila Mogognitas and Ms. Ananda Muhammad's presentation, followed by the question and answer session respectively. Last but not least, there's an announcement by Dr. Korompot and the closing by the MC. So to begin with, we will play the national anthem Indonesia Raya. Please pay attention. Okay. Now, the session for the welcome speech by Dr. Hairil Anwar Korompot, the chair of the English Language Education Program and also the co-initiator of this event. Time is yours, sir.
Thank you, Pak Fauzan. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
Yeah. And greetings to all of us. Very good morning. First of all, I would like to acknowledge the presence of the Secretary of the English Department, Dr. Tasundra SPDM Hum, and a number of the professors that we have in the English Department of the Faculty of Languages and Literature at UNM. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of lecturers and colleagues from various universities, both in South Sulawesi and the rest of Indonesia. And in particular, the two presenters, Ms. Carmila Mokoginta and Ms. Ananda Muhammad, the participants, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you to this seminar, which is the first session of the seminar and workshop series conducted by the Program Studi Pendidikan Bahasa Inggris, or PSPBI, in the English Department, Faculty of Languages and Literature, Universitas Negeri Makassar, in the year 2022. This seminar and workshop series began last year in the middle of 2021, and we have had two previous seminars before, and this is the third actually from all the series, but this is the first for the year 2022. As you have probably known, this seminar series is organized by the Prodi, the SPBI, and it is planned to happen every month. So we will have a seminar like this every month, featuring speakers from both the department or the Prodi itself, and invited speakers from our other institutions, higher education institutions in Indonesia and abroad. The session is under the theme Textbook Analysis and Pragmatic Studies, and this reflects the topics that the two speakers are going to talk about. And as you know, the two speakers are Mrs. Carmila Mokoginta, a faculty member of the Universitas Hasanuddin or Unhas Makassar, and Ms. Ananda Muhammad, a graduate of Unhas, who is currently studying for her PhD at Iowa State University in the United States of America. Pak Fauzan later on will introduce the two speakers to you before they begin their presentation. Participation-wise, until the registration was closed yesterday, there are 105 people who have registered for the session this morning, and they come from various parts of Indonesia, just like I have just mentioned, from various universities, not only UNM but also other universities in Indonesia. So on behalf of the leaders of the faculty and the department, I would like to welcome everyone to this seminar, and I wish you a productive and fruitful seminar learning from the two speakers. And on behalf of the Prodi and the department, I would like to officially open this seminar. Yeah, and good luck to the two speakers, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Pak Khairil. Okay, before I call our first invited speaker, I'd like to tell a few backgrounds of her. Miss Carmila Mokoginta is our first invited speaker. She is originally from Kota Mobagu, North Sulawesi. She now lives in Makassar.
Fauzan.
I'm sorry, it's a disconnected internet problem. So I continue. Miss Carmila Mokoginta became a lecturer at the English Literature Study program of UNHAS in 2000. Most of her classes are related to language study, and her research interest is in the areas of language, culture, and education. In addition to being a lecturer, Ms. Mokoginta is the head of international office at UNHAS, which is a very great achievement in her age, a position that she has held since 2019. So, Ms. Carmila Mokoginta, time is yours. Your voice is mute.
Thank you, Mr. Muhammad Miftah, for the introduction. And let me now share my screen, my presentation slides, I mean. Is it clear now?
Yes, visible.
Okay, thank you very much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And very good morning to all of us. Yeah. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to the committee of this seminar for giving me the opportunity to talk in this event. In this very good time, I would like to share what I have learned about cultural linguistics and also a few parts of my current study as a doctorate student of linguistics study program at Universitas Hasanuddin. And for this morning, the title of my presentation is Cultural Conceptualizations in English and Bahasa Indonesia Textbooks. I would like to divide my presentation into two parts. The first is I will talk a little bit about cultural linguistics, including the definition, cultural conceptualizations, and the cultural schemas, categories, and metaphors. And the second part will be about my own study, which implement or apply this approach that is now I'm doing at the moment. Okay, we go to the first part, which is the cultural linguistics. What is it actually? Cultural linguistics explores the features of human languages that encode culturally constructive conceptualizations of the whole range of human experience. I believe that some of the participants or some of the audience, I think, has known about this. And it is based on the premise that many features of human languages encode or instantiate cultural conceptualizations. And the cultural conceptualizations actually can be divided into three kinds. The first is cultural schemas, and then cultural categories and cultural metaphors. Okay, I would like to start from the cultural schemas or schemes. Capture beliefs, norms, rules, and expectations of behavior, as well as values relating to various aspects and components of experience. To make it clear, I would like to give one example from a study by Dean in 2017. The study is
Bumila.
Yes.
Bumila, your
Voice.
PowerPoint is not moving.
Oh.
You're still showing the first slide.
Oh. What can I? Let me.
Yeah.
What about this?
Yeah. It's moving now. It's moving now. Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe I
Clear.
should not make. So just like this, yeah, the layout.
Yeah. Outline.
Okay, so,
We're looking at your outline
I'm not
now.
in the. Yeah. Okay. So maybe let me start from this one. Yeah. So part one. Yeah. Okay. So the first part is cultural linguistics, and it explores the features of human languages that encode culturally constructed conceptualizations of the whole range of human experience. It is based actually on the premise that many features of human languages encode or instantiate cultural conceptualizations, which consists of three kinds actually: cultural schemas, cultural categories, and metaphors. I would like to start from the cultural schemas or subschemes. It captures beliefs, norms, rules, and expectations of behavior, as well as values relating to various aspects and components of experience. And to make it clear, let me give one example from a study by Dean in 2017. The study is related to cultural schemas in English textbooks used in Vietnam. And one of the topics explored in the textbooks is about tea drinking event. As we know that tea drinking is not only something, what is it? It has a special meaning. Yeah? It has a special meaning in some cultures, including China, Japan, Korea, and also in Vietnam culture. Therefore, the writer chose the topic to be analyzed further using the cultural linguistics approach. And the author found the 5 primary cultural schemas of tea drinking in Vietnam. The first is that tea drinking as neighborhood and friendship reinforcement practice, tea drinking as expression of respect and hospitality, tea drinking as an expression of simplicity. This is different from tea drinking in China and Japan. In China and Japan, tea drinking is like a high culture, yeah. While in Vietnam, it is considered as something expressing simplicity of the people life. And tea drinking as enjoyment of nature and peace, and tea drinking as contemplation and reflection. So there are the primary cultural schemas of tea drinking in Vietnam as an example for cultural schemas. The next is cultural categories or subcategories. Are those culturally constructed conceptual categories like colors, emotions, attributes that are primarily reflected in the lexicon of human languages. For example, there is a very interesting study on aging category in Australia. For people who are above 50 years old, there are 2 terms in Australia: older Australians and seniors. However, older Australians is the preferred term for that age category because it focuses on age feature only. while seniors is not really preferred because besides age, it also focuses on some other aspects relating to like the physical condition, the mental situation, and also the social condition. That is why, and they are all not necessarily in good condition, and therefore seniors are not really preferred term. Even though both terms actually refer to the same group age. However, one term is categorized as a preferred term, the other one is categorized as a unpreferred, and it is very cultural in Australian society. Let's see the second one, cultural categories, and the next one, which is actually very interesting and very, very cultural, are the cultural metaphors. They are cross-domain conceptualizations grounded in cultural traditions, such as folk medicine, worldview, or even the spiritual belief system. For example, in a study by Lu in 2017, the study is entitled Cultural Conceptualizations of Death, of death in Taiwanese, Buddhist, and Christian eulogistic idioms. Yeah. So in Taiwan, when someone died, there will be people will come and express their feeling toward the situation using what they call as the eulogistic idioms. And there are two categories of eulogistic idioms. The first is related to Buddhist religion, and the second is related to Christian religion. Particularly for Taiwanese Buddhist eulogistic idioms, the researcher found four cultural metaphors related to death. The first is death is rebirth. Yeah, death is rebirth. Death is a journey towards rebirth. Rebirth is west. Yeah, they believe that the rebirth will go to the west. And then that life is a circle. Yeah, I think some of us know about this. We call it something like, I forget the term for that. Yeah, reincarnation, something like that. And then also in the metaphor, there is a very special symbol, which is the lotus, yeah, kind of flower. So a person is a lotus, and heaven is a pond or sea that is full of the lotuses. Yeah, so these are actually very, very cultural and very interesting for further analysis. Okay, so that's the first part, just to share a little bit about cultural linguistics, to give some background. And I will go to the second part of my presentation, which is about my study. And in my study, there are four research questions. The first is related to the bookshelf itself, the textbooks itself, where I analyze and I try to identify cultural schemas, categories, and cultural metaphors. And then I connected the common cultural practices of Indonesian society. And also I try to connect them to the expected characters in the government regulation. Because in my study, I also try to connect the findings to the character education. And the last one is I try to abstract the cultural values from the whole connection. And the methods, there are two main steps, the analysis of the textbook itself, and then the ethnographic survey. And now I would like to share several of the findings. Yes, okay. So actually I found so many, because culture is a very big term. That is why when I analyzed the 12 textbooks, there are so many cultural aspects that I found, but of course, some are just, some just emerge one or two times, but some others emerge repeatedly, and there are so many of them. And that is why I focus on the significant cultural aspects. What I mean as significant is that for the cultural aspects that emerge in all the textbooks. Some emerge in all English and Bahasa Indonesia textbooks. There are three aspects: gender, education, and globalization. And some only occurs or emerge in all English textbooks. complimenting, congratulating, food, transportation, and traveling. And the last one, the last category or the last group, cultural aspects that emerge in all Bahasa Indonesia textbooks. There are two, negotiation and religion. Okay, and in this presentation, I will share the cultural conceptualizations that I found in three aspects: the gender, education, and globalization, as follows. Okay, here we are. I hope that it's still clear for everyone. Let's make it bigger. Yes, so the gender. They are all the cultural schemas that I could identify in the textbooks, in English textbook, Bahasa Indonesia textbook, and from the ethnographic survey. In English textbooks, I formulate the first schema is that men and women as people with the same rights for self-development through education and networking. It appears in English textbook, also in Bahasa Indonesia textbook, and it's confirmed in the ethnographic survey. The second one is that men and women as people with the same rights to work, but some types of jobs are considered typical for certain gender. So there are jobs that are typical for women, some jobs are typical for men. It appears in English textbook, Bahasa Indonesia textbooks, and also confirmed in the ethnographic survey. Next is that men as people with more opportunities to have great achievement. Yeah. Yes, and it appears in both textbooks and also in the ethnographic survey. And especially for the ethnographic survey, I found that yes, that men as people with more opportunities to be involved in politics and become country leaders, and men as people who prefer to study science, engineering, and technology. So their achievement becomes more visible. That is why, and it supports these cultural schemas that seems like men are people with more opportunities to have great achievement. And the last one is that men as people with preference towards public activities, while women as people with preference towards domestic activities. And it emerged in English, in Bahasa Indonesia textbooks, and also in the ethnographic survey. In the ethnographic survey, I found that there is one culture schema that women as people responsible for unpaid domestic works. Okay, so this is about the gender. Okay, next is for education. For education, yes, it's very positive in English textbook, Bahasa Indonesia textbooks. It appears that education is an important activity, education is a process involving technology and active learning method, and foreign education as a means to be involved in globalization. There is slight difference for the foreign education. In English textbook, foreign education is instantiated as a means to be involved in globalization, while in Bahasa Indonesia textbook, foreign education is instantiated more as a way to enhance knowledge and also to build leadership. Yeah, so it's more in English textbook, it's more related to globalization. In Bahasa Indonesia textbook, it is more related to development of knowledge and leadership. While in ethnographic survey, yes, there are two more related to the global vision. Yeah, so it supports the one here and also to academic qualification. The last thing in education is about examination. It appears only in Bahasa Indonesia textbooks, not really in English textbooks. Examination as a part of educational process. Yeah, and it also appears in the ethnographic survey. Okay, and the third aspect is globalization. And yes, so the globalization as the result of global mobility. It appears in English textbook and Bahasa Indonesia textbooks. Globalization as the result of global networking or communication. And yes, so I make it different because global mobility means that there is movement of people from one country to another country, while global networking not necessarily involve the global mobility. Actually, it can be done yeah, so using internet, yeah, using internet, online communication. So it's a bit different from the global mobility. And about the foreign languages, for English textbooks, of course, because it's English textbook, so the foreign language that is dominant is the English, while in Bahasa Indonesia textbook is in addition to English, there are also focus on other languages like Dutch and German. Yeah, Dutch and German. And it is confirmed in the results of ethnographic survey that globalization is the result of global mobility. Yes, so those are the cultural conceptualizations that I found in the three aspects of culture: gender, education, and globalization. And therefore, I try to make the conclusions from the cultural conceptualizations about the cultural values instantiated or reflected in the textbooks. Unfortunately, for gender, I think, yeah, it is still like gender inequality, yeah, except of course in education. In education, everything is good, but in terms of working, in terms of the division of work and equality in the household, for example, well, it's still like we cannot deny that the gender inequality still happen. But for education, it's very positive. Yeah, there is a value. It is highly valued in our culture, and it is reflected in, and it can be seen very clear in the textbooks in English and also in Bahasa Indonesia textbooks. And for the globalization, yes, it is something like a process that should be accepted. And no one can avoid the process of globalization. So there is a kind of acceptance of globalization and foreign influences. Okay, that's it. I think that's all I can share for my today presentation. There are several references if you are interested. And if you have questions or comments, and I will be more than happy to respond. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Carmila Mokoginta, for giving us such informative and interesting presentation concerning the cultural perspectives and conceptualization in connection with English language and textbook application in the first place. Now, allow me to introduce our next invited speaker, Ms. Ananda Muhammad. She is the Bachelor of Arts. Okay, she graduated from the Bachelor of Arts, English Language and Literature, Universitas Hasanuddin Makassar, MA TESOL, Applied Linguistics, Iowa State University. She's also the PhD candidate of Applied Linguistics and Technology from Iowa State University, whose specialization is in second language assessment. Her most recent research activity was to become an English placement test assistant coordinator in the Department of English, Iowa State University. She was recently also invited to conduct a workshop, a global online course, a massive open online course, finding ways to address trainee needs and different skills. In the webinar presented by the Department of English, Bina Nusantara University, Indonesia. Well, let me just welcome our next speaker, Ms. Ananda Muhammad. Time is yours.
Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, everyone. Well, I would just like to say good evening and apologies that it's kind of dark because it is actually nearly 9 p.m. here in the US. So, and there's a really big storm outside. So I hope you don't hear any noises like my back door suddenly flying away. So I'll let you know if my back door. But yeah, it's a rough time here, and I hope that the internet connection stays okay like this, because I think the internet connection is quite good right now.
So far, so good.
Okay, thank you. So the topic of my study is exploring the pragmatics of graduate students' requesting emails in the US academic setting. And before I move on to my overview, I'd just like to emphasize that the fact that this is a US academic setting study doesn't make it so that it's not relevant to you. I hope there are several concepts within my presentation that you could take away and use that possibly new knowledge to enhance your own teaching or research. I'll be very happy to answer any questions that you might have later at the end of presentation, or via email if that's needed. So just to jump into my overview, I'd like to first talk about the concepts of corpora and data-driven learning, especially if those are new concepts for you. And I'll talk a little bit about the motivation and the research questions driving the current study, my methods, results, and the pedagogical implications with example activities. I hope that this very last part, the pedagogical implications, can give you some ideas on how to implement the findings of such studies. So let's first start with what is a corpus, or my understanding is corpus is singular and corpora is plural. So what is a corpus? In the world of corpus linguistics, a corpus is a large principled collection of naturally occurring texts. It can be written or spoken, stored electronically. And this was the definition provided by Ripon 2010. And I highlighted several parts in this definition just to make it a little bit more clearer, because this is exactly what I did in this study, creating a corpus. So what does naturally occurring mean? Naturally occurring means that it's from actual language situations. So the language data comes from actual language situations. In the current study, it's from email communication. So it's email communication that happened in real life. So I didn't set up scenarios for people to write an email. It's literally emails that people had already sent. What do we mean by principled collection? This means that the texts included need to represent the type of language that the corpus is intended to capture. Since the corpus is intended to capture email communication in the US academic setting, obviously the texts need to come from that setting, the US academic setting. It needs to be emails from students to professors. It could be professors or instructors to students. It could be staff to students. So involving people within that setting. That's what it means to be a principled collection of texts. And what is large? When we think of large, and typically in corpus linguistics, large means really large. And I'll show you what that looks like later. But large here is fairly relative and quite dependent on resources if you're compiling your own corpus. Typically, people use corpora that are already available on the internet or some other publicly available corpus. One of the most popular one that is being used these days is the Corpus of Contemporary American English. And I have the screenshot here. If you look to the right, lower right, it says the corpus contains more than 1 billion words of text from many different genres. So this is a very, very large corpus, and it can really show you what large means. But this is not always the case, so keep that in mind. The next concept that I'd like to introduce is what is data-driven learning? Data-driven learning can be conceptualized in two different ways and often simultaneously. The first one is language learning that involves the use of materials developed based on corpus findings. So you have a corpus and you analyze the corpus, then you have some corpus findings. And language learning that involves the use of activities using corpora. The difference between the previous one, materials developed, in this case, students actually actively interact with the corpus within the language learning activity. So maybe the teacher asks them, open the corpus of contemporary American English, use the browse function. So they actively interact with the actual technology. Meanwhile, materials developed are often in the form of paper. So it doesn't necessarily have to be using computers. Why is data-driven learning desirable for language learning? The first one is that you're moving away from intuition-based language teaching. It's very interesting because in Carmila, I also did some textbook studies, and a lot of the literature states that textbooks produced by companies tend to rely on the intuition of the textbook authors, right? It's very rarely backed by second language acquisition findings, which we have a lot of, but it's not being used to inform the development of the textbooks. In this case, when we have corpus findings and we use it to create materials, we call it data-driven learning, and we're moving away from that intuition. And so in essence, we're learning from authentic text. We're learning from data that is possibly relevant to students, most likely will be relevant to students, and it's not made up, right? Sometimes you find textbook conversations, dialogues, and you're like, do people really speak like that? So you're not sure, do people really speak like that? When we collect corpus text, people do speak like that because we're not making up the data. And then finally, I think it would eventually end up with more meaningful language learning. So the motivation for the current study is that current email communication in the academic setting studies, and these are usually US-based studies or British, UK-based studies, they focus on status incongruent relationships, meaning that they focus on student-faculty communication. Rarely do they focus on students emailing other students, students emailing staff, for example. And so I intended to explore other sender-recipient relationships, including the student with student, student and staff. I'm also focusing on describing linguistic choices. So I looked at several different linguistic choices, which I'll describe in a moment. And I will use the linguistic data for pedagogical purposes. So instead of just focusing on the linguistics part, I'm taking it a step forward and thinking about, okay, I have this data, how can I use it to create pedagogical materials? Okay, so I have 3 research questions here. What types of requests do graduate students make by email within the US academic setting? So the focus is just in requesting emails. What lexical bundles appear in graduate students as requesting emails? And here's another term for you. Lexical bundles refer to recurrent sequences of words that occur in high frequency across texts. And I'll have examples to kind of illustrate that a little bit more. What do we mean by lexical bundles? And finally, what functions do the top 3 most frequent lexical bundles serve in requesting emails? So let's look at how the corpus was compiled. The corpus compilation process typically involves data collection, data cleaning, and data de-identification. So with data collection, what I did was, it was quite complicated. I contacted participants and provided them with an Excel sheet which is the data collection instrument, and then participants identify requesting emails that they are willing to share with me. They take out all identifying data because obviously I can't know who they sent it to for obvious, well, here we have what we call the institutional review board. We don't have anything equivalent like that in Indonesia, as far as I know, for human research, educational research. Usually it's just for like kedokteran, but this is something that we have here. And then the participants provide some contextual information for each requesting email. So for example, they would tell me, I sent this to a professor, or I sent this to a friend, a classmate. And then with the data cleaning, I extracted all that information and turned it into separate text files, because that's what, remember the definition of a corpus, you store it electronically, right? And I stored metadata. Metadata refers to the contextual information that was previously provided within that text file. And then I had to further de-identify the emails shared by participants. They are very, very serious about de-identification here, especially in corpus studies. So essentially that was the 3-step process. And then I actually ended up with more than, I would say 900 emails, but for the purpose of this study, I strictly looked at 200 emails because there was a lot. And within that 200 emails, there were 13 people sending the emails. So amongst them, they have 200 emails, and the total word count, the raw count, was 16,000 words. Compare that to the corpus of contemporary American English, which had a billion texts. This is quite a small corpus. Okay, so there's 13 senders in total, but if you see here, note that you see there's a lot of number of different senders here. That's because each person would send maybe one email to professor, one email to a teaching assistant, etc. So we have here the different recipients. So in the email communication setting in the US, we communicate with many different people, not only our professors. And yeah, the professor was mainly the recipient of the email. So in terms of data analysis, with the first research question, I just did a qualitative analysis coding the different requests. What is the intention of the request? And then to identify the lexical bundles, I used a program. Because the texts were stored electronically, I was able to use a program called nconc. And I used this version, and it's a very interesting, a helpful software. And then the last part is I did a qualitative analysis of the top 3 lexical bundles. And I looked at what are they doing within the text? What is the context of the use of that linguistic choice? So let's look at the first research question. If you recall, the first research question asked what types of requests are done in the US academic setting. And I found out that, interestingly enough, you could put the types of requests within a continuum from a more abstract request to a more concrete request. So with abstract requests, the object is not, there's no object given to the sender of the email, while the concrete side of the request, there is definitely something, a physical object given to the sender. So for example, with the abstract ones, the sender would ask, a student would ask clarification of information, a student would ask advice, suggestion, recommendation for something, requesting for approval. Those are abstract things. The recipient doesn't give you anything. And then in the middle, you have requesting to meet, requesting for permission, request for rescheduling, time, request to inform someone about something, like sometimes you might email your classmate and tell them, hey, could you tell X to do this for me? Request for feedback to review work. That's more concrete because usually the person that you're asking feedback from asks you to write it down for you and attach it in an email. And then definitely the more concrete requests, students requests for a letter of recommendation, very, very often. Requests for book chapters, textbooks, journal articles, requesting to complete something, completing group work, research tasks, and so on. So this is the, from the 200 emails, these were the types of requests that were observed. Then we move on to the second research question. This is where the lexical bundles are analyzed. So with that software, I was able to extract information, which I present in this table. On the second column, those are the lexical bundles. And if you see, you could see some recurring words, sequences of words. Trigram just means 3 words, 4 grams, 4 words, and so on. The reason why try, 4, and 5 were used was because if you go to 2 word sequences, it's not that meaningful. So you would get words like let me, it's not that meaningful. I am, so we start with the trigram. And so as you can see here, the first, the top 3 lexical bundles from the 3 word sequences are would like to, let me know, and I would like. Okay. And you can see that these 3 top lexical bundles appear with, in addition to other words in the 4 gram, like I would like to, and I'll talk about that later. And the reason why we focus on the trigram is because there's more variation to what other words appear next to those lexical bundles. Okay. Let's look at, in the third research question, I wanted to focus on what is happening here when people use would like to, what is that being used for? Okay. So I'm focusing on the first lexical top lexical bundle, which is would like to, and would like to, let me just get rid of that. Would like to appeared 47 times across 38 texts. That is pretty frequent. If you recall, there's 200 emails. So would like to actually got repeated 47 times across 38 emails, meaning would like to was used in multiple emails at the same time. So let's see. Out of the 47 instances of would like to, 42 instances were in the form of I would like to. Okay, so the I is in the front of would like to. And then what follows after would like to, the verbs are, as you can see here, and I've highlighted the most frequent ones. So people use the bundles, I would like to ask, I would like to meet, and I would like to talk. And the screenshot on the left here, where you can see would in blue, like in green, red, to in green, and the verbs in purple are an output from that AntConc software that I used to analyze my corpus. So I would like to was quite a common construction. What does I would like to function as? Would like to function as. One, it actually functioned as a request strategy. So for example, one of the emails you said, I would like to ask some questions about Unit 1. Could you let me know when you are available? So I would like to is a want statement, and pragmatics would call I would like as a want statement. But as you can see here in the example, that want statement occurred with other request strategies. Could you, so in addition to saying I would like to, they said, could you, which is another request strategy that functions to soften the direct request. So I would like to, in pragmatic terms, is considered a direct request. Okay. In the want statement, there's speaker dominance. So the dominance of the speaker, and then it is followed by an indirect request. What's another function of would like to? Apparently, it doesn't only function as a request, but it also functions as providing background information for the actual request. So I have two examples here. So the person says, I would like to meet with you. That's functioning as a request, and talk about my final project ideas for course. For now, I have a general idea about what I would like to do. So what I would like to do is background information for the request. It's not actually a request. And then the professor in charge of the conference would like to keep the conference participation fee at blah, blah, blah for blah, blah, blah students. Is there a way that we can update? As you can see, would like to there is just background information to the actual request, which is there a way that we can update? Okay. And finally, would like to also functions as a way to provide some background information about the sender. So an example email used, I would like to introduce myself. I am a PhD student, so I would like to isn't a request, right? It's like, hey, I would like to introduce myself. So having talked about very quickly some of the findings from the study, obviously it's not the whole findings, some pedagogical implications that I had in mind was the first one. So we have information about the types of requests, right? So we know that there's a lot of requests to professors, and students always ask about asking for recommendation letters. So maybe we can provide materials, teaching materials that specifically focuses on that scenario, so that when students need to do it, they at least know how to formulate that kind of email, right? And then instruction on emails, not necessarily just in US university settings, can be more systematic because it is not based on intuition. And that we have concrete linguistic examples of requesting strategies that are contextualized based on corpus data. What this means is you might have some experience with English language textbooks or foreign language learning, right? They have sections about requesting, and then sometimes they give you a table, right? And then on the they have a list of phrases that you can use, right? Kind of like lexical bundles. They have phrases, but they don't have any context. So they give you I would like to, but when do you actually use I would like to? In what situations is it preferable to use I would like to? That's the type of information that is typically not provided in such materials that are not data driven. So an example activity that could be used in classes based on data-driven learning findings. The first one is the goal of such an activity could be to introduce learners to lexical bundles that can be used to close an email, for example. And the type of directions that teachers can give is the first thing is learners are asked to discuss with a partner how they typically close a request email. And they can be asked to pull up an example email. So show your classmate the email. And when sharing with the whole class, so after doing the partner thing, they should state the exact words that they use to close the email and explain why they chose to close it in that way. So we focus on linguistic choices. If they said, oh, I just randomly chose it, well, that's another opportunity to teach them to be intentional in their linguistic choices. And then the expected outcome is that learners are more aware of the unconscious choices that they make when closing an email. And then learners can gain a few more phrasal options to use when closing an email in different email request situations. So sample material, very simple, is after that previous activity, you can give them a handout with, let's look at some example word sequences to close an email. Please let me know. Thank you in advance. Thank you for your, and these are directly taken from the corpus findings. But as I said before, just giving them these word sequences, it doesn't mean anything, right? So in hand with that, you give them the example emails, which I have here on the right-hand side. The dots just mean that there's more text before that. So you give them the example, thank you for your, then they see in the actual email, thank you so much for your flexibility and your help with the process. So they can see where that thank you for your appears within an email. So with that being said, my colleague and I, who actually graduated recently, we have this website that we are consistently working on, and we upload our research projects, the findings of our research projects there. And we are also in, this is a very long, it's a that started in 2017. So it's been a while. And we intend to post some materials there that you can download and implement in your classrooms. So, and I'd be happy to share this PowerPoint too later. Okay, and my email is there too. All right, thank you. I hope I didn't go over time. I wasn't sure.
All right. Okay, that's thank you very much, Miss Ananda Muhammad, for the presentation related to English corpus linguistics and its application in current age communication, especially email. So I believe there's a lot of questions, and you can have a look at the chat box. Mostly the question is for Miss Ananda. Yeah, so we'll start over with the first question from Miss Carmila Mokoginta from the other speaker. There's a question from the other speaker, Miss Carmila Mokoginta, to Miss Ananda. So the idea of DOL, this data-driven, what is that? DOL, yes, it should be DOL, is very interesting. Do you think it would be suitable to be used in EFL context, like in Indonesia? So that's the question.
So I think, Ma'am Carmila, I think it depends on if you want to use already available data-driven learning materials. So like what I intend to do with my website and the website that my colleague and I created was to upload materials based on our research findings. That way, teachers don't need to do anything. They can just adapt however they want, and that's it. They don't actually need to do the analysis themselves. So that might be preferable in the EFL context, actually in any other context, because to be able to work with the corpus findings is quite complicated if you don't have corpus linguistics background. But if teachers are interested to do their own corpus linguistics thing, I don't think it's impossible, but it is very time consuming. Yeah, there's a lot of data-driven learning materials online if you know where to look.
Still from Miss Carmila Mokoginta here, she wrote that, how is the background of the writers of the emails you use for the data? do they come from various cultural background?
I don't know about cultural. I don't remember if I asked them. I did ask them if they were a native speaker of English or a non-native speaker of English, but I don't recall if I asked them if they were a non-native speaker, what was their L1. I might have, but yes, definitely they were very diverse.
Okay. There's more question from Ria Jubari. Interesting study, Ananda. How would you deal with requesting permission from professors, faculties, admin, and other respondents in studying their emails?
Right. So I know that in the process, I was allowed to collect from professors, faculty, and admin. But the people who, because it was voluntary, right? The people who replied were mainly graduate students, but also graduate students who had teaching responsibilities. So I counted them as instructors. It was quite difficult because, you know, it's voluntary. So that's the difficult part with these kinds of corpus studies.
Okay. Now this question is from Nina Misnawati, one of our participants. She asked if she should use Ngram or just enough to use Coca if she will create her own corpus for her students.
Depends on the specific goal. So when you teach vocabulary, you don't teach just any vocabulary, right? You might teach vocabulary to use in, I don't know, maybe in English for a specific purpose or situation, right? The problem with Coca is it's so big that you can get confused very, very quickly. But they have a lot of different, if you look at it, there's many different genres. There's like specifically literature. So maybe you're teaching literature students. You want to teach them vocabulary specific to literature. I think Coca is awesome. But if you are teaching a very, very specific area of study, you have the text, right? You might want to just use Anconk because you can upload the text on Anconk, and essentially Coca is kind of like Anconk. It has similar functions. So it really depends, I think, what kind of vocabulary are you intending to teach?
All right. So this question is specifically for Miss Carmila. From Yora Jalu, he's interested in Miss Carmila's research discussing cultural context in textbooks. I have some questions about this, but previously I do apologize with the question. So this is the question: what is the method used in this research? Is it library research or other method? If it is library research, then what reference that you use? Second question is that what could you suggest for further research in cultural context in textbook? Time is yours, Miss Carmila.
Very much for Pa
Yora.
Yora Jalu for the question. Thank you very much, Pa. Yes, so for the in my study, there are actually two main steps. The first is the textbook analysis, and the second is the ethnographic survey. The textbook analysis is conducted to identify the cultural aspects and also to abstract the cultural conceptualizations and the cultural values included in the instantiated or reflected in the textbooks. And for that purpose, I use the cultural linguistics approach. And for the method, the method of collecting data, I use the content analysis to identify the keywords as usual, content analysis as usual, identifying the keywords, classifying, and then reducing the data and so on. While for the ethnographic survey, I use the literature review, or library research. And the sources or the references that I reviewed, there are two kinds: the academic text from journal articles, from textbooks, from experts, and the second is non-academic articles or non-academic sources. So it can be from anywhere. It can be from the newspaper, it can be from the TV, movies, everything. because for culture, of course, we should not only we should not limit ourselves to the academic sources, but also we should go to the non-academic sources in order to see what is really happening in the reality. Okay, so that's the methods. And my suggestion for the analysis for further study or research, there are so many gaps actually that I found in this study, and especially for Indonesian references or Indonesian review or literature. There are many cultural aspects that are not yet explored in detail in Indonesia. For example, actually there are several about 10 cultural aspects in my study, but I explained only 3 in my presentation. There are other cultural aspects like congratulating and negotiation. Those are 2 cultural aspects that are not really explored yet in Indonesian culture. I tried many ways to find literature about Indonesian negotiation, and then Indonesian the way Indonesian in expressing congratulation, not many, very limited. For complimenting is fine, but for congratulating and negotiation is little studies have been done for Indonesian linguistics and culture. So there are 2 there are 2 gaps that can be filled further in the next study. Yeah, for the congratulation aspect, and for what's the other one? Negotiation. Negotiation especially is very interesting because when you have data about negotiation, then the application can be very wide. It can be applied in economic life, in politics, in political discourse, in economic discourse, in international trading, everything. Negotiation is one of the cultural aspect that will be very important, I guess, in this modern time, especially in the globalization era. Yeah. Okay, so that's my answer for Pak Yora Jalu. Thank you very much again.
Thank you very much, Miss Carmila Mokoginta. It's a very nice response. Now, there's a question here from our secretary of department, Mr. Lasunra. Subjected to Ms. Ananda, how would your research, this is related to the research implication, how would your research affect the EFL teaching in Indonesia contexts, where communication between students and faculty members mostly occur in WhatsApp? Not
right.
email.
That's a very interesting question, and thank you so much for the question. The thing is with emails, it's categorized as asynchronous computer-mediated communication. So the reply isn't instantaneous. WhatsApp, I think, can also be asynchronous because you're not always on your phone, I'm assuming, hopefully. But yeah, I think it's mostly synchronous. So the reply is pretty immediate and it's kind of like text messaging. So I wouldn't say there is a direct implication, but there could be if there's interest in that. And I'm sure there are studies about such apps like WhatsApp, what the language is like in those situations. But I think the most important thing to consider that is directly related to my current study is context. So what are the cultural expectations in email communication versus Indonesian cultural expectations in WhatsApp? To be honest here, I don't know my professor's phone numbers. I only email them. I don't text them. I need to be very, very close to them to have their phone numbers, right? So WhatsApp doesn't happen. So I think just based on that, it would be a whole different study for WhatsApp in Indonesian study.
All right, the next question from Simon Sitoto. from Simon Sitoto to Ms. Ananda. Do you think that the bundles of requests you list need to be classified into both metaphorical expressions and congruent expressions?
Thank you so much, Mas Simon. Hello, it's a long time no see, Pak.
Hello. Yeah,
Yeah, Pak.
good.
I'm not sure. I'm not so sure about metaphorical expressions. I think congruent expressions maybe, because when we look at when I looked at the email communication, it's typically very straightforward, and there's not enough space to be very creative with language. But I think you can try to look if there's a possibility for it to be classified, but I actually haven't really looked into all of the data because I have 900 emails and 700 of those I haven't cleaned. But that's very possible, very possible.
Harus data.
Yeah, banyak datanya, Pak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Another question from Ami Riksa Fauziana, who is not quite familiar with Corpus. She asked, what's your suggestion for the future studies? And what Corpus apps do you use?
For the current study, since I still have a lot of data, I need to look into it a little bit more deeply. And I'm actually planning to present it at the American Association of Corpus Linguists conference soon. So I think just looking into it a little bit more, finding more lexical bundles that appear very often, and then creating pedagogical materials that I can share with people. That's my main focus right now. And the corpus, for this study, I used my own corpus and I used ANCONC to analyze the data. But in the past, for other studies, I've used my case. And I can later on, I think when Mem Carmila answers other questions, I will paste some links to other corpus freely available online.
Okay. Now here's the question from our initiator, our Mr. Khairil Anwar Korompot. He asked if there are differences and similarities between the English and Indonesian textbooks that you referred to your PhD research. He might have missed this point during your presentation.
Ibu Mila.
Yeah, thank you very much, Hairil, for the question. Yes, so there are similarities and also differences, yeah, in terms of the significant cultural aspects that I could identify in English and also in Bahasa Indonesia textbooks. Some cultural aspects appear in both, yeah, in both English and also in Bahasa Indonesia textbooks. There are three of them: the gender, education, and globalization. While English textbooks, some other cultural aspects appear only in all English textbooks, like the complementing, congratulating, food, transportation, and traveling. And I guess because, you know, they are more because for us, English is like something international, related to international, you know, international thing. Globalization, everything like that. Therefore, transportation, food, traveling, they all appear in the English texts, very significant in English textbooks. While in Bahasa Indonesia textbooks, two are very significant: negotiation and religion. Yeah, religion. Religion appears only in Bahasa Indonesia textbook and not only very little, very few data that I could find in English textbooks. So the difference between English textbooks and Bahasa Indonesia textbooks, you know, we can feel when we study when we use the English textbooks with our students, with the students, it becomes like more dynamic or more happy like that, and more global, something, you know, very free, open-minded, everything. But when I see the Bahasa Indonesia textbooks and I reflect on the data, that I could feel like the text, the discourse are more reserved, like more calm and not really not so happy like that. In terms of religion, especially, there are so many traditional stories. There are stories about our heroes, Mr. Habibi, for example, and there are so many emotional things that we can feel, yeah, when we reflect to the Bahasa Indonesia textbook. So, but I think it's fine. I mean, maybe so I can feel like there is actually maybe balance, yeah, for the students. When they study English, they become like a dynamic people, happy person like that. But then when they study Bahasa Indonesia, then they become like more calm and remember all the nationalism, patriotic things, everything. Yeah,
Maybe less fun, yeah.
yeah, something like that. So maybe, well, maybe it's good, but it's something that we can reflect further in our education, I guess. And ask ourselves what actually we really want our students to learn in English and also in Bahasa Indonesia. Yeah, thank you. I hope it answered your questions. Sir.
Definitely. Thank you.
Miss Carmila, another question for you from Miss Siti Sahrani. So based on your findings, what recommendation would you make to the teaching situation in the class?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much, Ibu Sahrani, for the question. Yes, during my career as a teacher, I really care about this, all the cultural things, the character education in our class. So, I mean, especially with textbooks, because textbooks are still very dominant in language education in Indonesia. Many teachers still rely on the use of textbooks, and therefore, and as Ananda had said, that if it is the institution-based learning material, that it relies on authors. What Ananda? What term did you use, Ananda? Authors.
Intuition.
Intuition. So as a teacher, I think we really need to be careful with that. Because not all writers, I guess, have good mission. Yeah, yeah. But even though, but I know that actually all textbooks that are used in Indonesian schools are now monitored, yeah, and evaluated by the government. But still, of course, as a teacher, and we have to evaluate the material and see whether they really contain something that we want our students to learn. Yeah, be careful with that, because once they are exposed to the values, yeah, that's what I believe. When people are exposed to the values repeatedly, especially for elementary school students or high school students, and that would have a very big influence to their cognition. Yeah. Thank you, Ibu Sahrani. I hope it answers your question.
Okay. Still, there's another question for Bumila from Mr. Dr. Sultan. He's our ex-secretary of department. The question is there any certain scope of your study, especially related to the samples of your study? English textbooks is equal with English subject only, or all subjects are written in English? Indonesian textbooks is equal with Indonesian subject, or all subjects are written in Bahasa Indonesia?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Pak Sultan, for the question. Yes, so for my study, I limited what I mean by English textbooks are the textbooks used for teaching English language in high school, especially in 10th grade students. And also for Bahasa Indonesia, textbooks that are used to teaching Bahasa Indonesia subjects for 10th grade students. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Both of our distinguished speakers today have assisted us to increase our range of knowledge and understanding and experience in cultural perspective of English and the English corpus linguistics, and yeah, all of them. Thank you very much once again. I think the file, including the PDF and the presentation file, are shared in our chat box so everyone can access. Last but not least, there is a question from Ms. Zulistiawati. To what extent should a teacher rely on text and real-life experiences in promoting knowledge and character-based education in terms of teaching English or any language or cultural teaching? Maybe this is subjected to Ms. Carmila?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Bu Sulis, for joining us and also for asking this question. Yes, to what extent should a teacher rely on text and real life experiences? Yeah, when we talk about character education, character-based education, then I guess there is a very big responsibility for the teacher, not only to rely on the text, but also, to become not really a role model, but to facilitate the student in order to get understanding and also awareness of the characters that we really want them to have in the process of the education. So I for myself, I think it's more to the real life experiences. Yeah, so we can use the text only as as a starting point, maybe. So the students read the story and then we discuss. But then further, of course, we have to go to the real life experiences and in order for our students to have the awareness of the characters. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Camila, thank you very much. All right, before we go to the closing meeting, we have some announcement from the host, Dr. Khairul Anwar Krompot. Time is yours, sir.
Thank you, Pak Fauzan. And yeah, wow, great presentations by two of our colleagues from UNHAS, or really associated with UNHAS, of course, yeah. And as long as I can remember, I think this is the first kind of collaboration between academics in the English department of UNM and UNHAS in recent years. Yeah, we've been longing for this kind of activity for some time, and I'm very pleased with what we have achieved today, and particularly very pleased with the two presenters who I know very personally. Yeah, I know Ibu Carmila Mukuginta. I've known her for a long time, even before I met her. Yeah, even before I met her, because people kept asking me when I went home to Kota Mobagu, to Bolamongondo, people asked me if I knew Ibu Carmila. I hadn't had a luxury to meet her at the time, but that reminds me of trying to get to know her in the next events, and I finally got a chance to know her by email, I think, sometime in 2009 when I was doing my PhD, and she was doing her master's, I think, at the University of Adelaide, my own alma mater. Yeah. And Ananda, I know Ananda very closely. Yeah, she was just a little girl when I was doing my master's in Adelaide back in the late 1990s. His father, Pak Nathan Muhammad, was one of my best friends in Adelaide. I think I got my what is it, dishwashing job from him in an Indian restaurant. So I'm very pleased to see what Ananda has achieved, and I'm very proud of her. I think she's an asset, not just for Unhas, but also for Indonesia. Yeah, working now not only for her PhD, but also working as an academic in the US. This is a feat that not many Indonesians can do. Yeah, so I quite envy you, Ananda.
Thank you so much.
And your English is beyond my expectation.
Thank you.
But your English has developed since you were a child, when you were in Australia.
Yes. 6 years old.
6 years old, yeah. So that has developed into such a very good level of English, and I think you, Unhas, will be very proud of you. Indonesia will be very proud of you, and I think the rest of us very proud of Ananda's achievement. And these two presenters, if you don't know, they're both PhD candidates. Ibu Carmila is doing her PhD at Unhas, and Ananda is doing her own PhD degree at Iowa State University. So we wish them luck for the rest of their studies, and for their further contributions to the field and to our country. Yeah. Right. So on this occasion, I would like to thank the two presenters once again. Thank you very much for making yourself available for this event, and for giving your insightful presentations. And I would like to present you with this, certificate. Yeah, so I'll just share my screen and show you the certificate. Oh, hang on, it's not showing. All right. So allow me to share this with the rest of you, with everyone. Yeah, so this is the first certificate, and that's for Ibu Carmila Muginta. Yeah. It's in English, Ibu Carmila. I can do it in Bahasa Mongondo if you want. Okay. And this one is for Ananda Muhammad. Yeah. Is it showing? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you very much. Yeah, from the bottom of our hearts at the English Department of Universitas Negeri Makassar. Applause. Right.
All right. Okay.
A few more things, Fauzan.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Before we go, so those are the certificates for the two presenters. There will be certificates for the participants as well, but they will come later by email. Yeah, especially for those who have signed up for this session, filling out the Google form that I shared with everyone. And lastly, I would like to announce the next session, which will happen in early February 2022, to commemorate the beginning of the new semester. It will be in the form of a general lecture or studium general to be presented by an alumnus of the English Department of UNM, and also an American alumnus as well. Yeah? He got a Fulbright scholarship for master's degree in the US, and is now working as a private employee in a private English language school here in Makassar. But that will be announced later on. So once again, I would like to thank the presenters, the participants, my colleague Muhammad Miftah Fauzan, who has served as an excellent moderator for our session. And apologies for any inconveniences. Hopefully we can meet each other again in the next session. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Okay, thank you again, Miss Carmila Mokoginta and Miss Ananda Muhammad, for answering those questions and for the great presentation. It was a pleasure to have you with us. So this concludes the webinar. Thank you all participants for attending. We as the organizer of this event do hope that you have learned and enjoyed this presentation. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Yeah,
Thank
well,
you, everyone.
yeah, thank you. We have it until 12 o'clock if you want to say, if you want to later on for saying hello to colleagues and friends from everywhere.
Maybe taking picture, paling.
Oh yeah, take pictures. Yeah, you should. Yeah, we should.
We need to activate. I think all participants
Yeah, turn on the camera.
can turn on the camera.
Yeah. Are you taking the picture, Pak Fauzan, or me?
Could be both.
Yeah, okay. I'll do that from my part. Yeah. Hang on. Gallery, so I can see everyone. Oh, 64 people are here. Yeah. So
The 3 pages. One, two, and 3. One more time.
wow.
1, 2, and 3. Okay, done.
One more for me, please, before everybody goes. Before everybody. Yeah, done. Okay. Yeah, so there are people here from everywhere. Makassar, Gorontalo, Surabaya, I think, Semarang, and other places. And some of these are my own students, former students, colleagues, classmates. Yeah, colleagues from Gorontalo.
Coffee mate.
Saya pamit. It's nearly 10 p.m. right now.
Okay,
And,
Terima kasih, selamat istirahat, Bu Hananda.
yeah.
Have a good night. Have a good night.
Sweet dream.
Thank you so much. Terima kasih
Thank you for
banyak.
all.
See you all.
Yeah.
Thank
See
you,
you,
Ling.
Ananda.
Iya.
Bye.
Halo Pak Ling, thank you.
Ibu Els. Aduh, Ibu Els. So lamanya aku dapat.
Ya, sogode. Aduh, Pak Ling, so poco-poco
Iyo, banyak anu di sini. Banyak angin sini.
Ya, salam Pak Ibu Nina, sing adik-adik.
Bisa sampai. Iya dah.
Oke, thank you, see you.
Iya.
Paling.
Halo.
Halo.
Ibu Mary.
Iya. Paling ini pas ini dah paling baru ada tadi sementara ditutup. Jadi nanti sobat tengah akhir-akhir baru dapat ikut ini ada kasih ujian tadi.
Gabung-gabung lagi tiap bulan ini. Tiap bulan ada.
Iya, baru saya lihat. Aduh, paling yang bicara
Pak Lingso, tabay Ibu Mary. Pak Lingso,
Iya.
ya.
Lebih makmur.
So makmur di. So poco-poco.
Iya.
Selamat
Paling.
Pak.
Oke.
Iya.
Nanti mau berapa di Gorontalo atau di Makassar?
Oh,
Oke,
iya,
sekali-sekali
paling
pasiar Gorontalo Pak Ling.
Iya.
Baik Tuhan di sini di mana paling?
Kita baru balik dari kota ini.
Iya? Iya ya, salam pemain tua.
Ya, makasih.
Oke.
Iya. Nah, paling ya, makasih.
Oke, Bu Mary, makasih banyak.
Ya,
Ya,
ininya enggak ada
makasih.
link sertifikat ya?
Ada, nanti mau kirim. Kalau perlu kirim saya di WA nanti.
Ada datanya paling di Zoom nanti bisa dilihat attendinya.
Oh iya.
Iya, saya juga. Insya Allah bisa
Iya.
dapat.
Iya, jangan lupa Pak Ling ya. Makasih
Ya.
banyak sebelumnya.
Makasih.
Ya.
Iya. Ayo
Selamat
paling ya,
siang.
izin
Ya,
mau
dadah.
dulu ini.
Bye.
Dadah. Aduh.
Sorry ya, itu tadi bahasa Manado, bahasa logat Gorontalo dan sebagainya.
Untuk attendinya Pak bisa dibuka di Zoom Pak di anunya di website Pak.
Di websitenya. Oh,
Zoom.
ada.
Iya, nanti dia ada khusus record nanti berupa kayak Excel begitu. Dia kayak Excel, kayak Excel begitu. Bukan filenya bukan file Excel, dia tetap di website, cuma dia tabulasi begitu. Ada siapa saja yang hadir, berapa menit dia hadir.
Oke. Oke, jadi silakan yang masih ingin menyapa teman-teman yang sudah lama tidak ketemu, silakan. Kalau mau pamit boleh juga, silakan. Terima kasih sudah hadir ya. Thank you for attending the session and see you in our next session in February.
Terima kasih banyak paling.
Ya, sama-sama Linda. Terima kasih.
Iya.